Okay, so when we're talking about being educated on politics or about global affairs, there has been a very deliberate agenda to keep us separate from these sorts of conversations. Now, I'm a millennial. Most millennials, I think, have the experience where their parents and their families have told them, do not talk about politics. It's unpolite. It's going to create chaos, blah, blah, blah. And this is something that I think they learned from a perspective of like, we don't want to offend people, right? We don't want to ruffle any feathers, right? And we know now in our generation that that's like very toxic. That's very unhealthy. And that sort of belief system, which I think was highly encouraged by our governments, then keeps people very separate from what's actually going on in politics because no one's talking about it. We only would hear what's being reflected on the news, right? So that is a huge aspect of the reasoning why we think that there are certain people who are educated enough to talk about important matters like what's happening in Palestine, or that you have to do a huge amount of research. Like, it's actually very simple to do research and to educate yourself. It really doesn't take that long. Like, at most, spending a few weeks Googling some stuff and watching some documentaries. And there's been this idea implanted that politicians are more educated than us, or there are certain people who are in a better position to be able to speak about certain topics, which of course you want to have like some amount of due diligence, right? But depending on the issue and like the severity of what's happening, like I'm not going to go lead a conference in front of 100 scientists about quantum physics. However, I can talk about the basics, right? So we have to understand when it comes to this I'm not educated enough conversation, that's a very disempowering stance to take that is supporting basically politicians and being able to do whatever they want to do. Allowing people who have been given more power to basically do what they want to do without having a checks and balances system to some degree. And all of the work I do in teaching about the shift from matriarchy to patriarchy, this is a pivotal foundational element of the patriarchal uprising, which was the introduction of hierarchy, the introduction that certain people are better than others in certain capacities. So with this specific topic, that's being implemented through the idea that some people are smarter than others. And I think at this point, we can very, very, very clearly see that politicians are not smarter than the average person. We're catching them in all these lies and all these things that they used to be able to get away with because there wasn't social media that could spread this information, right? The news was the only thing sharing anything. So we are capable of learning and educating ourselves about these sorts of things. It's not just delegated to certain individuals. So part of our responsibility in changing the type of society and structuring that we live in, I would say in returning to a matriarchal structure, which is much more harmonious for everyone. It's not just women ruling things, it's women ruling in harmony so that everyone is actually truly equal and the earth is protected as humans are. So as we're stepping into that, we have to take full responsibility for ourselves. We have to step into our highest power. This is also one of the things I talk about when I teach about sacred leadership. In a bunch of my courses, I talk about this. A lot of us are shying away from sacred leadership because then all of a sudden we are holding responsibility. There's no one else to blame. So in many cases, people are happy delegating the problems off to the politicians because then it means that they're not the ones to blame when there's an issue. They can just point the finger at whatever politician they choose to love and hate and celebrate and demean. You know, if we're taking our own responsibility, we learn those people have no more power than us. They might be in positions where they have more power in a certain way, but they're not smarter than us. We are just as capable, especially when we come together. So, yeah, that's the bigger message around I'm not educated enough. Like that we actually are looking at a conversation about leadership and responsibility and your power. Yes, if you loved this video, go follow me on YouTube because I talk about this sort of thing all the time in relation to the ancient feminine and how that touches so many different aspects of our life today. You can find me on YouTube at Ali Wilkins. It's also called Ancient Feminine, so if you type either of those, you should see it. I look forward to seeing you there.